Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Last Rep, brought to you by Muscular Development. I'm Bob Cicherillo, your host. A concept I've had in the works for some time now, an ESPN Sports Center style format for the world of professional bodybuilding. And that's exactly what I'm going to do, but no man is an island, and I can't do this alone, so I brought in the troops, the best of the best, and my good friend Peter McGough. Welcome to The Last Rep, Peter.
Thank you very much, Bob. I'm grateful for you to have me involved in this, the inaugural venture of this program. I'm sure it's going to be groundbreaking, and we're going to offer a lot of insight and information and have some fun along the way.
Fun is the key, Peter, and that's exactly what we're going to do. No, there was no question in my mind as to who to bring onto this show, because
So what happened to him? Where did he go?
Well, he wasn't available, but
Okay.
you were, and that's really the bottom line, Peter. But you've been in this game a lot of years. I mean, when we talking a lot of years, we're talking 40 plus years that you've been in and around this game. You've been to some shows as far back as in the 60s and 70s. You put your own publication back out when you were still in England, and worked yourself all the way up to the main editor-in-chief at Flex Magazine for many years now. Now, of course, you're still writing and involved in the business. So give me your insights, Peter. I mean, when you think of this type of a show and what we can offer to the fans, what comes to mind immediately?
Well, you think of the Arnold Classic today. I mean, it's a massive event, the weekend, the sports festival. It's got thousands and thousands of athletes, hundreds of sports. Go back to when I was first looking at contests, the Mr. Olympia maybe had 5 people in it. Even go back to the Arnold Classic. The first ever Arnold Classic was 1989. There was only 2 contests, the Miss International for women and the Arnold Classic for men. There were no booths, no exhibitions, none of that stuff. First winner was Rich Gaspari. Now today, we've got like 600 booths, and a few of them was Rich Gaspari's booth. So there is a certain symmetry to the whole event.
Yeah, that's right. And Rich Gaspari and Lee Labrada and a lot of the greats of those days, you're right, now at the Expo, with big, gigantic booths, some of the industry leaders in the supplements field. Yeah. And Rich was certainly a worthy champion even as far back as '89. But, you bring up some great stuff, Peter, which is this is not the Arnold Sports Festival that we know today, which is going to be 100,000 people going through Columbus, Ohio in early March, which is always fun anyways, as you know. But this is taking on a life of its own. I mean, this is millions and millions of dollars into the Columbus community every year. Jim Lorimer, who's done a great job, and I'm going to ask you about him in just a few minutes. He's been putting this show on since its inception. But a far cry from, like you say, being at the Vet, and there was maybe a handful of guys competing, and it wasn't even the Arnold Classic then, but the Mr. International.
Yeah, well, the Arnold Lorimer partnership started in 1970 at the Mr. World contest promoted by Jim Lorimer. They'd never met. Arnold flew in, won the contest, beat Sergio for the first time. They formed an immediate friendship, and it was a handshake deal, and they've had that, over 40 years now. They've been running contests. Went to the Mr. International, Miss International. They ran a few Olympias in Columbus, and then, like I said earlier, 1989, here comes the Arnold Classic, and then year by year, they've built it up bit by bit, extra contests, more booths, more sports, until it just takes over the whole town these days.
Well, Peter, you mentioned a handshake deal, and you and I have heard this story many times over the years, especially from Mr. Lorimer, who now, God bless him, 85 years old, still running the core of the Arnold weekend. But that's not just a story, is it? I mean, they literally do not have any paperwork. They don't have a contract. They have a handshake from years and years ago, and I believe, you were probably there witnessing this, but Arnold competed in the Mr. International on that very stage at the Vet, and they actually made this deal before Arnold even stopped competing.
That's right. What happened was Arnold competes in the 1970 NABA Universe in London. Lorimer really wanted him to compete the next day in the Pro World it was, which predated the Mr. International. And he flew Arnold in by charter jet, which was, unknown in those days. They met for the first time that day. Arnold won. Arnold was really impressed with the way the show was run. The World Weightlifting Championships were on at the same time, run by Jim Lorimer. And they just bonded straight away. They've never needed a contract or anything like that at all. It's been like that for 42 years.
Oh, that's amazing, really, when you think about it. Another thing that's amazing, Peter, is throughout all these years, and next year they'll be celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Arnold Classic, is some of the great champions over the years. And you've been to pretty much every Arnold that's ever been handed down to us throughout all these years. Who are some of the names that stick out at you? We know Flex Wheeler, of course, has 4. Dexter has won 3. But give me some of the other names that kind of stand out to you and some memories from the Arnold.
Well, of course, Rich Gaspari is down in history as the first man to win it, and nothing will ever change that. And then we had 2 years where 90 and 91, on stage, Sean Ray was the winner, but 90, there was drug testing, he got disqualified. Mike Ashley took over. It's amazing to me to think back that it's 20 years since Vince Taylor won this title. You know, and I remember that time because Vince was in the middle of a tear. At the end of 91, he was third in the Olympia, and then he won 5 of 6 Olympia Grand Prix shows. He won the first 3 shows of 91. He just introduced the great Terminator routine, which was bringing the house down.
Yeah.
And of course, Vince went on to win 22 pro shows, 5 as a Masters champion. So, you know, it's been speckled with all-time greats all along the way, this contest, the Flex Wheelers, the Jay Cutlers. Ronnie Coleman won this contest in 2001. In my opinion, the best shape he's ever been in. You know,
and that was as Mr. Olympia,
yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
which was kind of unprecedented even at that time and still today, because you don't ever see a reigning Mr. Olympia go outside the Olympia box to compete almost anywhere other than, you know, it's once in a while we have a circuit and they'll have some shows immediately following the Olympia, but this was a whole separate outing, and it was something that Ronnie wanted to do purely to win the title. He didn't need it. He was already Mr. Olympia. If you're Ronnie Coleman, I mean, obviously he was Ronnie Coleman, but do you put yourself out on the line? If you're Phil Heath right now, who never won the Arnold but is Mr. Olympia, do you go back and is this a show that you want to win?
I think you're very vulnerable when you do that. Even if you're a great champion, something could go wrong, something could come out of the woodworks. You're right, Ronnie really wanted to do it. He's the only reigning Mr. Olympia who's ever entered the Arnold. You know, Jay Cutler won the Arnold and became Mr. Olympia, Dexter Jackson the same. But he's the only reigning Mr. Olympia to put his title on the line in Columbus in March. And maybe that drove him on to produce that physique because honestly, I think it's the best he's ever looked.
You know, and it's a great argument because we've talked for many years about, you know, what, and as many people like to debate still to this day, what was Ronnie's all-time best? And it always seems to be torn between the 01 Arnold and the 98 Olympia, the show obviously that started his entire career. Interestingly, when I've asked Ronnie in past interviews, what physique do you like the best out of all the Ronnie Colemans that competed? If you were to put all 8 of you up on stage from each year that you won, which is the one you like the best? And his answer was a quick 1998.
Wow, yeah. I would put 2001 Arnold on its own. The best Olympia I think he's ever been to me was 99. In 98, he was hard and dry and ripped, but he was just a little bit flat. I think he put everything into it. The next year he came back with the confidence of being a champion. The first time in Vegas, that little bit fuller, and I think that brought out some more detail.
Now, was it 03 that Ronnie stepped on stage at like 290-something pounds?
287 pounds, yeah, which is... That was like another contest, you know.
And while amusing, I mean, Ronnie stepped out, and we literally all kind of just started laughing because we were all down in the front 2 rows or so. And we weren't laughing for any other reason other than he was so ridiculously big and but he was in shape at 290 pounds. To be on stage in Mr. Olympia's shape, I think is still unmatched to this day. May go unmatched for 50 years.
That's correct. I mean, the thing is, 2001 Arnold, he was 245. Then in 2001 Olympia, he nearly lost to Jay Cutler. In 2002, he nearly lost to Lebroni. And I think he was still sculpting away and trying to be refined. I think 2003 was like, you know, I'm going to go the other way now. And of course, that just blew everybody off the stage.
Well, I'm not so sure we're ever going to see that physique again. I'm also not so sure we're ever going to see an 8-time Mr. Olympia again. And I say that with all due respect, of course, to Phil Heath, who, of course, is just starting his career and has one in the bank. But when you think of what it takes to win that many times in a row, Ronnie Coleman, Lee Haney, Arnold back in his day, you know, won 6 and then, of course, 7 years later. But I'm not so... Has that time passed us, Peter? Have we seen the last of the dynasties?
I think so. There's 2 things at hand here. The genetic pool is bigger, so we're getting more and more guys in. You know, Phil Heath is a freak, but then if you look at the younger guys coming through, Centopani, you know, Seth Roche, I think, is a guy that's ferocious. Is going to be somebody.
You got lots of new guys. Lionel Bayeki. You got, like I said, it goes on and on, Peter. But you know what?
Steve Kuklo, that was the one.
Steve Kuklo, another new guy that we're waiting for him, his debut, and I'm pretty sure he'll be on the Olympia stage in the next 2-3 years, battling with Phil. But you know what, Peter? We're going to go on and plot some more stories, but we're going to break down this year's Arnold, the 2012 edition, and we're going to do that right after this break.
I train with Max.
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 I train with Max. Do you?
And welcome back, everyone, to TLR, The Last Rep. I'm Bob Cicherillo, along with Peter McGough. Peter, when we last visited, we were talking about the Arnold. We're talking about the history of the Arnold. We're talking about some of the champs. 2012 edition of the Arnold, a great lineup as always, but there's always the stories behind the story. And I think that's always where the fun is. And we've got plenty of them here. First and foremost, Branch Warren won the Arnold last year, and then had a devastating knee injury that we've seen it take other people out. We've seen it take Victor out just a few years ago, and he was able to take a year or two and kind of get back, and you could still kind of see it a little bit, but he worked his way back pretty good. But Branch just did this last year. He hasn't really missed a beat other than the off season, but he not only is back from surgery, from recovery, back into the gym, but he's a contender, and I've seen pictures of him, as you have, over this last week. He looks like he's better than ever. How is this possible?
Well, of course, Branch Warren is a one-off. He's a warrior. He's a caveman. If somebody tells him something's impossible, he'll make it happen. I mean, you're right, Bob. I mean, he did this 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Everybody else takes at least a year, 18 months. And even then, it doesn't work out when they come back. Now, yes, we've seen some great pictures of him. I don't know whether we've seen a picture of the leg yet.
I've seen some pictures of the leg. You could see it a little bit, and I'm going to go back about a month ago or so. But here's my theory on that. You're going to notice it more in the off season because you're bigger. I think as he's dieted down, it's actually become less pronounced. But I think at this stage, and from what I'm hearing on the inside, you can't tell a difference at all. Which to me it's a miracle he's even on the stage. But to think that he's actually in contention for this title again, to defend this title. And Branch, I mean, he has that pit bull mentality. Just, he likes when you predict him last. He likes when you predict him, not last, but, like fifth or fourth or anything but first, because he uses it as fuel. I'm wondering if this hasn't really helped Branch in a manner, and not to say that the injury is a blessing in disguise by any stretch, but has it helped him taking the time off that he had to take off, giving his body a rest, and now giving him listen, there's no way you'll be able to make it on stage type of fuel that he needs?
Yeah, you're correct. I mean, he's always had this sort of siege mentality. He's thrived on being the underdog. When he first got into the pros, it was like, yeah, he's got a great pair of legs, but he's got no body. Then he built some upper body. Well, he's got an upper body now, but he's got no shape to it. Last 2 or 3 years, he's put the shape and the balance in there. And I think, obviously as he's progressed in bodybuilding, he's become pretty affluent. And I think this has taken him back to be, back in the trenches again, the underdog. Branch won't make it back. There's no way he can do this. Certainly can't do it for the Arnold in 6 months. So I think you're right. With that mentality he's got, it drives him on to sort of ram those thoughts down everybody's throat. I still think it's a big ask for him to do that, and I still think if he wins the Arnold and his legs are back in shape, that's like the biggest comeback since Lazarus.
I think even Lazarus would have a tough time with Branch on stage. That's for sure. But you know what? Hats off to Branch Warren, man, because like I say, I'm not so sure a whole lot of people could do what he does. That said, he's also doing it, Peter, with a new addition to the family. Him and Trish, congratulations to them. Just had their first baby just a couple months ago.
Yes, and a new branch on the family tree.
Oh, look at Peter already starting. I knew you'd
But
come
the
up with
funny
it.
thing is, we're talking about Branch's Drive. The daughter's called Faith. Maybe there's a message there.
You know what? An underlying message. But I tell you what, if there's anything that they're sharing over that in the Warren family, it's faith, because they are truly an outstanding couple and now an outstanding family. So we'll wish Branch all the best luck in the world as he gets ready. But there's other stories here. We have the story of Dexter Jackson, a 3-time Arnold champion who never thought he would win the Olympia, who ends up as Mr. Olympia the other year, but still striving. He wants that 4th title. Flex Wheeler's got it, but Dexter wants one. He wants 4. The question is, can Dexter do it at this stage of his career, Peter? Have we seen the best Dexter that we're going to see? Is he on the other side of the hill when it comes to his career? Is this a show that Dexter Jackson can win?
If you'd have asked me last December the 9th, would Dexter be a contender for the title at the Arnold Classic, I would have said no. His best days are behind him. We've seen that tapering off for 12 months, 18 months. But at the Masters in Miami, even though it wasn't a top nat, it wasn't the Mr. Olympia or anything, and it was guys over 40, there's still some great guys in there. Dexter Jackson, to me, looked the best he'd ever looked. It wasn't like he'd made a step back. He was better than he's ever been. The legs were back. The shredded was back. He was fuller than ever, which brought out more detail. Last 18 months seems his legs had just lost away. The quads weren't separated. Sure. Everything was there. I'm telling you, he really impressed me. As I say, I wouldn't have put him in contention for this title 2 or 3 months ago, but he could win this.
Well, now, let me ask you, Peter. Now, we go back a long way. You've seen more shows than pretty much anybody I know. Was Dexter that good, or was he that good because there wasn't Phil Heath standing next to him and Jay Cutler and any of the rest of these top contenders? But you have enough experience to separate the two. Are you telling me that he was that good? That
good on December the 10th? Yes.
Wow.
Because remember, Dexter Jackson, if I'm saying he was his best ever on December the 10th, this is the guy who, less than that, has been 3rd in the Olympia and won a slew of pro shows and 3 Arnold Classics, beating mass monsters, beating Jay Cutler at the 2003 show of Strength, stood next to Ronnie Coleman and not been obliterated. And he's like, 40 pounds lighter than these guys.
And that's the best you can hope for when you're standing next to Ronnie, is to just not be obliterated.
That's right.
Whether you lose or not's irrelevant.
Sitting next to him in the restaurant, you're going to be obliterated.
He's obliterated a few meals. I can tell you that right now. But how do you see Dexter in this lineup? I mean, if he puts December 10th on stage here at the Vet, is he in contention in the top 3, or is that good enough at this stage with the other guys to be fighting for 4th and 5th?
I think he's good enough the way he did to be in the top 3. The great, conundrum we've got here is, in modern day bodybuilding, who's going to hit it on the nail and who isn't?
Sure.
I think Dexter's in prime position. If any of the other favourites in there slip a little, he's going to come in. I think he's got his appetite back. He knows how to do it again. That's what happened in December. I think he could be the wild card here that could take his fourth Arnold.
You never want to discount a Mr. Olympia, that's for sure. If you got the tools to be number 1 in the world, you got the tools to win any show in the world. So we're going to keep our eye on Dex as that unfolds. With the old, we have the new, Peter. Dexter Jackson, a veteran of the stage, a former Mr. Olympia, 3-time Arnold Classic champion. Evan Centopani is the new guy on the block. We saw him just in a handful of shows. He's only competed in odd number years, which is striking when you think that this is an even number year. So he's actually breaking out of the mold. But I think Evan has done it right. I think he has meticulously picked out the shows that he wanted to compete in. And he won his very first pro show, as we know. He won his debut, which has not been done a lot over the years. We know Lavroni, I think, did it, and Flex Wheeler and Phil Heath. But that's about what comes to my mind immediately. So he's in pretty elite company, but he didn't take that as an impetus to just move on and go on other shows. And, we're going to see Evan at the Olympia. We didn't see that. We saw a guy who kind of handpicked and says, you know what? I don't think I'm ready to take the next step. I still want to see better for my physique. I'm going to take this year off. Smart move, in my opinion, because you don't see that enough in this day. You see guys kind of haphazardly just trying to get to the Olympia. So,
was that 10 minutes?
No, that's our note right there that says we're on the right track here, Peter. That's that bell that we have that goes off that says, keep doing what you're doing, man. And what it tells me is that Evan Centopani is in a picture-perfect position to take somebody out at this show, possibly even win this show. I mean, he's a big boy. I mean, he's not small. 5'11", 6 feet tall. I'm going to guess 250, 260 pounds. So I'm thinking that Evan's got the tools that it takes to put himself in the top 3. He was 4th in this show just last year with a couple of the names that we just saw in front of us. in front of him. But has he made the improvements enough that what you've seen to actually leapfrog these guys and put himself in the title spot?
It pains me, Bob, but I basically agree with everything you said previously about Evan. He's very impressive. He's a young guy in this day and age. He's only 29. He's got bags of time, and he's taken his time. And he's taken his time to make those improvements, doing... this is his 4th pro show in 4 years, that's all. He's taken his time to make the improvements, but also if you talk to him, he'll talk about balancing his bodybuilding with a healthy lifestyle. So he's not doing anything crazy. He's not competing 3 or 4 times a year. He's not crash dieting twice a year, losing 50 pounds here, 50 pounds there. Very impressive when you speak to the guy. Now, when you look at Evan Centopani of 2006, 2007, when he won the Nationals, tremendous width, looks great from the front and the back, but the thickness wasn't there. But he's put that thickness there, so everything's been working to a plan. I'm very impressed with this guy, the way he's slowly built up there. And I think, again, this is a strange show where, I think any of 4 or 5 guys could win this, and it'll all depend on who nails it and then maybe who doesn't. And Evan is one of those. It wouldn't surprise me if he won.
No, well, he's definitely one of the best newcomers we've seen in a while, probably since Phil Heath. So we'll definitely be keeping our eye on Evan. But you know what, Peter, we're going to go to a break here real quick. But when we come back from the break, is the Wolf hungry enough to win this show? Is Eduardo Correa the giant killer that he needs to get into the top 3? And is Gustavo Badell freaky enough to get himself back in contention? We'll find out right after the break.
Europa Sports Products, the industry leader in sports supplement distribution.
Europa is the industry. We're going to get the best product knowledge, the best customer service, the best discounts, the best everything from Europa.
Europa's reputation in the industry is probably the top. They're the #1 company in the industry, not only as far as I'm concerned, but for the people in the industry.
I think they're known in the industry as really being one of the premier distributors. I think everybody kind of looks to them to lead the industry in different directions.
Our goal is one-stop shop. Our goal is to be the inventory management specialist for our customer that we use. Our goal is to be the information stop for that customer, to be everything that a customer needs in one place.
If you own a gym, a specialty retail store, or any business that sells sports supplements, you're missing out if you don't buy from Europa.
And we're back with the last rep, Bob Cicherillo, Peter McGough. Peter, when we stopped before the break, I had 3 questions for you, and I want to see what kind of answers you've got. I've got my own opinions, of course. Dennis Wolf. We've seen this guy kind of ebb and flow, but when you look at his record, he only really kind of had one bad show over like the last 3 years. So I think he kind of gets a little bit of a bad rep. But we've seen pictures of the Wolf recently, and he's a monster. I mean, this is a big boy. He's 6'1", 280 pounds. I don't know what he's ended up on stage, but he's wide. He's got the big shoulders. He's got the small waist. He's got the flaring thighs. With the improvements that he has made, where do you see Dennis Wolf in this? I mean, is he a contender, or is he still 4th, 5th looking on the inside?
Well, I think last year's Arnold Classic, he was 2nd, but
behind Branch. Yeah.
He could have well been 1st. I mean, remember just a couple of weeks ago, he'd been 4th or 5th at the Flex Pro, and everybody had written him off, and then bang, he came back, and he did the same at the Olympia. He got 5th at the Olympia, but when he walked out at the Olympia at the start of the pre-judging, he looked amazing. I mean, he was crisp, he was hard, he was full. As you say, he's got that size. He's got the most spectacular frame, in terms of the shoulders and the wasp waist, and then the flare of the legs. When he's in condition, he's got such humongous muscle. He makes everybody else look small. If he can nail his condition, if he can look as good throughout the pre-judging as he looked at the beginning of the Olympia pre-judging, because he faded a little bit, and the judges noticed it, and he got penalised. I think over-penalised, but I think he's got he looks like a Mr. Olympia. He poses like a Mr. Olympia. Yep. That back double biceps from the rhomboid is the best ever. There's nothing else like it ever been seen. So, yeah, if he's on, he's another potential winner. This contest is a strange one for the Arnold. It's so competitive with these guys in it, especially when you think that the top 4 from last year's Olympia are not in it. Phil Heath's not in it, Jay Cutler's
Right.
not in it, Kai's not in
That's
it.
right.
Victor Martin is somewhere else, so he's not in it. And yet it's still ultra competitive, and it's probably one of the the most looked forward to Arnold's in years, I think.
And interestingly, if you take a look at last year's results, which I have in front of me, it's Branch Warren, Dennis Wolf, Victor Martinez, Evan Centopani, and Dexter Jackson. We remove Victor out of there. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if that lineup from last year just duplicates here.
Yeah.
Of course, you've got some new talent in here as well.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see where it all plays out. But I'm with you. I think Dennis gets a bad rap. I mean, I think he's got no calves. He's got his lats are too high. I think he's made some corrections there. I mean, the calves are what they are. I mean, we've had Mr. Olympias that didn't have the best calves in the world, but overall they had a physique.
Dorian Yates for one of them.
Yeah, Dorian comes to mind with those. Those are cows, Peter. But certainly, that is a Mr. Olympia caliber physique. I agree. Again, I think he gets penalized. He's got the small waist. So from the back, it does look like his lats started a little high. But I don't know. That looks like a big thunderous back double bye to me.
It's still a showstopper. It still gets the crowd going. Sometimes we can
Sure does.
overdo the semantics of it. It's like, look at the physique as a whole.
Right.
Bang! What's the wow factor?
And you can hear
Dennis
it with that
Wolf has
crowd.
the wow factor.
You can hear it with that crowd,
Yeah.
Peter. We come out. I mean, I'm right there on the podium. I can hear the crowd coming at me. They are a big Dennis Wolf, favored audience. That's for sure. Eduardo Correa, 5th place at the Flex Pro, bumped up from the 202s last year. Now the 212, but that's a whole other show. A lot of people thought he could have placed higher at the Flex Pro. I had him kind of sounding in 5th. His conditioning was great, but it was with the added size. Of course, I think he's not as aesthetically pleasing as he was at 202, 205. But he skipped last week. There was a 212 show in Arizona last week that I was at. And it was, not a very deep lineup, but a show he could have just waltzed in and literally won. And he's in Arizona. Actually, he was down the street training. DJ is down there, and he's training him and helping him. But is that a mistake in your opinion, Peter? Like, is this a guy who should be focusing on the 212? But if Eduardo Correa is 100% here at the Arnold, can he match up with the big boys?
I think it is a mistake not to go for the 212s. I don't think it was a mistake when he goes to the Flex Pro, dip his foot in the water, see where he was in the open class. But now the writing is on the wall, I think. No, this is, they're the top 4 at the Flex Pro. There's better bodybuilders than that around that he's got to go up against. The strange thing with Eduardo is, especially at the Flex Pro, and you won't hear this being said too often, maybe he was a bit too conditioned. There was too much stuff
bodybuilding blasphemy, Peter.
Yeah, and it was so he didn't have certain fullness in other places, especially the thighs. I think he could have, been a bit fuller, sacrificed a little bit of conditioning, which I know is, a sin for anybody to even think of, but he would have still been the most ripped guy around. I still think at the Arnold he'll be the most conditioned guy on stage. Nobody gets that condition, that hardness, that detail. But I think, the chickens came home to roost. He was weighing, 216 at the Flex Pro. When that sort of guy stands next to guys of 250, 260, size wins out in the end. And in this lineup, we got a lot of big guys.
Well, as the old adage goes, a good big man will always beat a good small man in the world of bodybuilding. And that brings us to Gustavo Badell. Now, we haven't heard the name Badell in almost 3 years now. It's been closer to 3 years since we last saw him on a stage. This is a guy who was a contender at the Olympia at one time, and a man who arguably beat, and I use that in big parentheses, Ronnie Coleman at the challenge round that one year. Take that for what it's worth. But you know what? The guy was in contention. I mean, he was up there as high as 3rd at the Olympia. But then he fell off a map. His placing started to kind of slide. If you look at his record, it's not very impressive the last 2 years he's competing. In 2009, he actually won the Atlantic City, but it wasn't a very good lineup. He didn't really beat any A-listers there. 3 years later, what can we expect to see from Gustavo Badell? I mean, this is a huge question mark for this show.
It is. If we go back to the Gustavo of the mid-2000s, the guy that finished 3rd in the Olympia in 04, whatever it was, there was a guy who was always in shape. He was always hard and dry. Didn't have the most spectacular physique in terms of body parts. But what happened to him all the time was he'd get into the second call out or whatever. You'd think, oh, they're going to place him 6th, 7th, 8th. As soon as he stands next to people, he makes them look not as good. Oh, we better move him up, move him up. And he always fought his way through the call outs to get those positions and those high positions. Then he got a bit soft. Now, to hear Gustavo talk, having those 3 years off, as free of contest dieting and everything, not only is he mentally refreshed, his body's refreshed, and he's expecting to come back at his best. At his best, I think he'd be 5th, 6th in this lineup, but it's still a lot to ask, and it's the big unknown quantity of this contest.
And it's a hell of a show to start with, Peter. I mean, it's not like he went in, he's going to go in one of the smaller, circuit shows and then kind of, build up. But, I mean, you're going back to the second biggest show of the year with the Arnold, with a hugely impressive lineup.
Absolutely.
And some real big boys in there.
Yeah.
So we'll see if 3 years actually helped him or hurt him. And like I say, it's just a big question mark on that Arnold stage. You can't even really predict where he'll be because we have no clue which Gustavo is going to show up. I mean, he could be a contender. He could be completely out of the mix and fighting for 10th as far as I'm concerned. So I wish him the best. Gustavo's a real good guy, and I like to see these kind of personalities, back on stage. So with that, Peter, we're going to move into our predictions. Now, I don't want to get into specifics because we're going to do that after the break. But we got a pack line. We talked about the top 4 guys. Everybody pretty much has the same guys fighting for the title. As you said earlier, I think equally all 4 of those guys have an equal chance to win the show. We don't see that a lot in pro shows.
No, absolutely. I mean, like I say, Dexter's come from out the field from just 2 months ago.
Well, there's usually a front runner of some. Now,
Yeah.
Normally, I think Branch would be the front runner because he's the champ from last year. But with that injury, there's still that little bit of questioning: will he be back? Because we saw Victor do it.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw Victor come back, but you could notice the leg. I mean, it was definitely, a detriment. Yeah, I mean, you could see it.
And that was, you could notice it 2 or 3 years after the leg. I mean, it didn't heal up within a year, and we're talking about 6 months here. And I also must say, I don't think Branch was at his all-time best in winning the Arnold last year. I think his all-time best was when he was second in 2009 to Jay Cutler, where he was really dry and hard. I think there was a little bit of water, in his body last year, so he wasn't absolutely at his best. He's got to come back in that condition, that granite condition that he's shown before, and the leg's got to be back as well.
That's for sure, because if there's, the judges are going to be keying in right on that. Is that fair for the judges to key in on an injury? Like, can you remove that as a judge? I mean, everybody looks at the boards, everybody sees what's going on there. Yeah. Is that something that's going to be looked at first, or is he beyond that?
No, they'll be looking for that straight away. As soon as he walks out, can they see a difference? Double biceps, how's he standing? What's that leg look like? That's part and parcel of the game. And one body part though shouldn't decide. If everything else is perfect, he's still got the armory to win it. And we're talking about the leg maybe being a little bit atrophied. We're not talking about one great big humongous leg and a withered stem over here. It's not going to
like Captain Bligh out there with a parrot on his shoulder. Well, hopefully he doesn't have the patch on there. Last time we seen that was with Vince Taylor years ago. That's a whole other story we'll get into later, Peter. But we're going to go to break right now. When we come back, we're going to break down the top 8 guys and put them in order. And then, of course, I'm going to put Peter on the hot seat with his final predictions. Who will win the 2012 Arnold Classic after the break?
I train with Max.
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 I
train with Max.
I train with Max. To you?
All right, welcome back, everyone. All right, Peter, it's go time right now. We've got 14 guys in the competition. I think I only want to key in about 8 to 10 of them, if that's good with you.
Okay.
We've got some outstanding bodybuilders, but what I think you see is a 1, 2, 3, 4 split, and then a 5, 6, 7, 8 split. Now, anything can happen on game day, and let me just preface this because everybody says, well, it always just depends on what they look like on stage. And to me, that's like saying in a football game, well, it just depends on who scores more points. Right. It's like, well, yeah, we kind of know that. But so we will never say that, of course, on TLR.
You just said it.
What we will, well, I just did say it, didn't I? Damn it. Yeah. Anyways, we'll work on that as we go. Yeah. One thing I do want to work on, though, is this top 8. Let's actually make it top 10, Peter. Nice round numbers. Here's what I'm seeing, and tell me if you see anything different. Eduardo Correa, we just mentioned. I think even if he's the most ripped man in the show, he's going to have kind of a tough time here. I think the size is just going to be too much. He's going to have much better and bigger competition here at the Arnold in terms of quality. You got even guys like Mike Kefalianos, who comes in very ripped up, and he's not much bigger than Correa. So I'm thinking that he's probably going to be somewhere fighting in for that 9th, 10th spot, along with Sean Roden, who we just saw at the Flex Pro, a very good up-and-coming bodybuilder. But I still think he needs a little seasoning.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, you know, it's a fact of bodybuilding judging that the results from the Flex Pro are going to come forward. You know, it's already almost the first round of the Arnold was the Flex Pro. Right. So Correa's not going to sort of be the winner of the Arnold, or I don't think he's going to get fifth based on, you know, what happened there. I see him being fighting, there's a few of them fighting for that 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th.
Sure.
You know, among them Abiad, Pekulski, who I'm very impressed with. And I don't think he gets, you know, the recognition he should have. Every show I've ever seen him, I've always thought, he should have been a couple of places higher. You know, those freaky legs, that, you know, space age type of physique he's got with him. You know, I think he just, you know, he's a modern bodybuilder. He's a freak.
Yeah, the Pac-Man has made some great progress. Now, he reminds me of Branch Warren 5-6 years ago, where he was just all legs and he had to bring up the upper body. And but I think Pac-Man's done it. I mean, he was impressive at the Flex Pro, and he's had another whole week to kind of, you know, bring it down a little bit and just tighten it up. It's his back that needs work, and that's going to take some time. That's not a conditioning thing or a dieting thing. That's a training in the gym thing, and he just has to figure out, you know, how to actually get that back to respond a little bit better. But I'm with you. I see those guys kind of in a pack with Correa, Roden, Fouad Abiad. I see in that crew as well. Not the most structurally gifted athlete I've ever seen, but man, he really gets that conditioning in, and he's made great improvements. All of these guys, by the way, very young in their career, so we don't want to be too hard on them. But this is the Arnold, Peter, and this is what you put yourself up against when you put your name in that hat to compete. That brings us to about the top 6-7 guys. Now, Brandon Curry, we haven't even brought up yet, and Lionel Bayecki. I mean, two outstanding names. And again, two guys that are young in this sport. So it looks like we've got a kind of resurgence. You know, it looked like we just kind of had the same guys, and they were top guys, but the same guys for like the last 5-6 years. But now with these guys, Steve Kuklo coming up, Evan Centopani, and these type of new names in here, I think we've kind of got a resurgence into the pros.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Curry, I mean, he's only 28. I think he's the youngest guy in the lineup. I mean, and, you know, his career has been a bit slow burn. He's got this tremendous shape, genetics. He's never really nailed the condition until the Olympia, where he was just there to fill the numbers up, and he came in at 8th position. I mean, he has that freaky upper body, and then that twisting, you know, double bicep pose, which is a classic. You know, if he brings his legs up, if he's got the condition, he's a star of the future. He's just got to give us the impression that he's really hungry for it. He sometimes appears a bit too laid back, and I don't know whether that's in every aspect of his life, but he's got to come out there, I'm here, this is my stage, I want a position, a top position. I'm not just here to be nice to people.
Well, he was 8th in the Olympia, which is certainly, you know, to be taken into account. I mean, you're top 10 in the Olympia, you can't really get around that. So these other guys got to take notice of him. He's kind of got the reverse Branch Warren thing going on. He's got to get his legs up to match that tremendous upper body. But Peter, I was doing some stats getting ready for the show, and this is kind of interesting, but just some stuff to throw out there, you know, for the folks out there. The last time Branch lost to Dexter was at the 2008 Arnold. Now, that's interesting because he has not beaten him for 4 years in the last however many outings they've had together. Interesting stat there. Dennis Wolf versus Evan Centopani, 1-1. They've each beaten each other one time, so this would be the rubber match with these two guys. Dennis versus Dexter, 3-0 in the last 3 meetings. A lot of people, again, they don't you know look at something that far, but I, of course, have taken my spare time and gone through painstakingly, Peter, gone through these numbers. But Dennis versus Dexter, 3-0 in the last 3 meetings. I think that would surprise some people. Centopani, as I mentioned earlier, first time he's competing in an even number year. He's actually competed every other year since he turned, since his days as an amateur, actually. Bayecki versus Curry, 2-0. Evan versus Dexter, 2-0. So Dexter seems to be getting the short end of the stick here, no pun intended. But you can see where Dexter's kind of slid back the last couple of years, but let some of these new jacks kind of get in front of him.
Yeah, and I think that trend would have continued until December the 10th, like I said before. And it's funny when you said that Dexter hadn't beaten Branch since the 2008 Arnold. I'm thinking, well, Dexter won the 2008 Olympia, but of course Branch wasn't in that Olympia.
That's right.
He was injured. He injured his tricep falling down the stairs.
That's right.
He injured his quad in a car park, So maybe the safest place for Branch is under a 600-pound squat bar in the gym.
Apparently, it's in the
That's a
hospital.
safe place.
Apparently, it's in the hospital later, Peter. But Peter, do these numbers that I painstakingly put together mean anything? I mean, like when I put these together, is this something that I can look at and I can actually go, okay, so if Dexter beat Branch and Branch beat this guy, can you actually put that in a computer and get the results? Is it that close, or is it just arbitrary numbers?
I think there are many sports where stats play a very, very important part. But still, you know, Mike Tyson got knocked out by Buster Douglas in
That's
the
right.
10 round. You know, and I think in bodybuilding it's even more variable. We again come back to the condition. You know, I think there's only one of 4 guys could win. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if any of those 4 guys won. And it's all to do with the condition, the modern way of tinkering and doing everything. Because it's not always about the guy who gets it right. It's more often about the guy who gets it wrong and gets it wrong in the last 48 hours. How many times have you and I seen guys, pictures of them, or in the you know, the hotel or something,
Sure.
and they're absolutely spot on, and then they walk out and they've lost a little, and it's nothing to do with that lighting or anything.
Right.
It's because they were trying to get that extra 2% and lost 10%. We've seen it so many times, and it's part and parcel of modern made bodybuilding. So any of these guys could win, any of them could screw up.
Ask for an inch, you get a mile. In the world of bodybuilding, that's not a good thing. Lionel Bayecki, that's a guy I got kind of penned in that 4th or 5th. He seems to have all the attributes. I mean, he looks like Flex Wheeler from years ago. He's got the big round muscle bellies, the small joints, nice symmetry and proportion, you know, very, again, hybrid, kind of a Chris Cormier-ish and Flex Wheeler-ish. His conditioning, though, is not, we haven't seen spot on. Yeah. If he nails it, can he take out one of these 4 guys?
If he nails it, it's possible. But if those 4 nail it, then he won't. You know, I think, you know, Lionel's put on, what, 30 odd pounds in the last
looks like it,
18 months or something. And I don't know whether you can always control where that goes and what you do with it and how conditioned you can get it. That takes a little bit of time to work that miracle. And he was a bit soft at the Flex Pro. 2 weeks is quite a bit of time to get into condition. But has he got the experience to get into condition from that point? You know, he might come in with the condition this time but be flat, you know. So I think he's certainly one for the future, but I'd be very surprised if he made top 4.
I'll be curious to see if the Flex lineup just kind of moves from Santa Monica to Columbus, Ohio, because those guys were right in a row.
Yeah.
With Bayecki winning that competition, Ben Pekulski, Fawad Abiad, Sean Roden, and then, of course, Eduardo Correa. Be interesting to see if you could just kind of plunk that out and stick it in here from, like, you know, 5th, you know, through 8th. Now, of course, the big question mark in there, Brandon Curry, of course, who was not in the Flex Pro, and certainly a talent. So I think that battle right there, though, between those guys, and that's a good competition. We always talk about who's going to win the show, but, you know, there's always a few battles going on at any given show. So we're going to keep our eye on those 2 in particular. Peter, time's running down, so I want to get to the predictions right now. Just to take you off the hot seat a little bit, I'm going to give you my predictions first. And I've got it Dexter in 4th, Dennis Wolf in 3rd, Evan Centopani in 2nd, and Branch Warren defeating all odds and coming back and winning a 2nd Arnold in a row.
Okay, so the way I see it is 4th Dexter, 3rd Branch Warren, 2nd Centopani, and number 1 Wolf. He will howl on Saturday night. One way or the other he'll howl.
He'll be howling, and at least the fans will be howling. We know that. All right, Peter picking the Wolf, and I'm picking, of course, Branch Warren. Could be bad news for Branch Warren because I never pick Branch Warren first, and he always wins. So I'm hoping I don't jinx the poor guy. He's had enough bad luck throughout the year. So, Peter, one thing's for sure, this Arnold is looking to be a great show to start this season off with a bang. And then, of course, we're off and running with the Pro League schedule. And we're all over the place after that. Of course, we'll be right back here at the TLR desk reporting on the Arnold as soon as I get back from the Arnold. So, for Peter McGough, I'm Bob Cicherillo, and we'll see you soon.